Hello everyone. Today I'd like to spend some time with our primary assignment for this class, which is the Research Exegetical paper. And you'll find full information here in this little green book on the Moodle page. I'll click in there and I want to talk for a moment about the goal of the paper. The goal for this paper is to engage in reading well in preparation for preaching, teaching, and personal enrichment. This is a twofold process. Number one, we're going to gather information. And number two, we're going to synthesize or prepare that information to present for others. The technical terms here would be exegesis and exposition. And this I pulled from Alan Ross, A Commentary on the Psalms, pages 172 to 179. Ross carefully explains how to go about this process. So if you're curious about more than what we're actually putting into this talk, you can have a look at that book in the library. But basically what Ross claims is that the first stage, gathering information, is primarily for you, for the exegete, the student, the one who's doing the paper. Whereas the second part, synthesizing the information or preparing it for presentation, is mainly to make that information ready for others. And those are actually two sort of separate goals in this whole long process. Okay, so let's first of all talk about the book itself and walk through each of the assignments briefly. When you get into the book, the first thing you'll find is a sample paper, and if you click on here, that sample paper will come up and you can download it and have a look at it. Mainly it's here so that you can see a little bit about how it is different from the exegetical outline, which we'll look at next. But also, what does a final paper look like? Yours may not look exactly like this, but you're going to want to have something in mind about how to put the paper together, so that's why that particular sample is there. Periodically over the term, I will put up other sample papers. And importantly, the student papers that are unnamed are papers that I put up for one or another reasons. And sometimes they may not be an A paper, but they may be very well written in the sense that the argument is clear, and that sort of thing. So I'll have you have a look at a few more samples, but in the end of the day, what I want you to do is create the best paper that you can, a paper that you can be really proud of in the end. Okay, assignment 2 is an annotated bibliography. This is due next week. I would recommend kind of hustling around. What you're going to want to do for this one is to find 10 different sources and write brief annotations about each of them. That information is going to come in handy when you come to write your paper. And what happens here is that I'm really top-loading your research here to the front of the class. And students tend to like that about week 8 when they're going, oh, I've got quite a bit of this already accomplished here when I'm putting my final paper together. So this is the purpose of putting that bibliography right up here as one of the primary assignments. Number 3 is a checklist. The checklist is actually coordinated to the Broyles information, which is in eReserves. That's the main, kind of the main resource I have for you for this paper. Now I want you to look at this note here under number 3. This is not an outline for the final paper. See assignment 5 for the form and content of the final paper. The purpose of this outline here is for section number 1, gathering information. And basically what you can do is use this to make sure you've touched on each of the aspects of Broyles that go into each one of the following assignments, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? So that's why that's here. Please do not use this as an outline for your final paper, but rather as a help to make sure that you've gathered all the information that you want to gather. The important thing about the checklist here is that, especially for 2 of the assignments, you will only include a paragraph summary of the assignments rather than including all of the information that you're going to dig up on those assignments. And that is, the first assignment for that is the text comparison, which is in assignment 1 that you're doing this week. You will not reproduce that word for word in your final paper, but rather use that information to identify maybe a word that needs word study or a concept that needs to be studied more. The versions don't all agree on it, or maybe they do all agree on it, but it'll help you to isolate information that you're going to want to study further down the line. But we won't pull all of that into the final paper. And the second thing is when we get to doing the word study, which is down here at 6, assignment 3, there's a lot of information in that assignment that will never make it into the paper. Because that one is another information gathering paper. So you're going to sum that up into 1 or 2 main paragraphs. So when you get to those 2 assignments, make sure as you're preparing this portfolio that you do all the work, but then take that and summarize it. In other words, you're going to synthesize part of that information and use it in the final paper. So this is a checklist. It gives you kind of the scope of what you're going to be looking at for each of the parts of your psalm. And then you're going to make a portfolio of these assignments for yourself to go back on when you come to writing that final paper. Okay, assignments 4 are things that are listed here, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Assignments 1, 2, 3, and 4 fall firmly into the gathering information category. And then the last one down here, 5, your final draft, falls into the second category of preparing the information for others. So all the way through here, you're going to be doing some different kind of processes that may not look like they're going to all fit together, but in the end, they actually will. Okay. The assignment for this week, you've probably found this by clicking on the link in your assignment forum, is to choose a particular psalm and do a text comparison. Okay. So here's your instructions, looking at a certain few pages of Broyles, and then going down here and choosing one of these psalms. Okay, so please make sure you've chosen a psalm within this list. This does not include all 150 psalms, but rather some of them that have interesting exegetical importance and that kind of thing. If there's a psalm that you prefer to do and you don't see it on the list, please email me and we can talk about that. Okay. So for right now, we don't have a working knowledge of Hebrew. So what you're going to do is take 3 or 4 translations of your psalm and look at them and check out where the psalm is the same and where it's different. Sometimes you'll find a good word study that way or another concept study, okay? And then finally creating a document. This is a really good idea, not to just type into the forum, but to actually create a document so you can have a portfolio of all your documents by the end of term. So I was just putting it in a Word doc and hanging on to that, putting them all in a file together. Okay, you can upload this into the forum by scrolling underneath the text box, and underneath that there's a place where you can drag and drop a file for your group mates to have a look at. Okay, so that's all we can talk about for this week's assignment. Okay, so let's click on to the next assignment here. Genre and context. And again, we're still kind of in the information gathering stage here. So for this one, we're going to look at the text of the psalm itself, and you're going to really do that good close reading. Okay, so you're going to look at the psalm until you come up with kind of one idea here. What's the main emphasis of this psalm? Is it kingship? Is it God's greatness? Is it God's loving kindness? That kind of thing. And you can just summarize that theme in about a sentence. 4.2 is a structural analysis of the psalm, where you're going to break it into logical sections. I'm going to include some more information from Ross on this process. For right now, what I'm going to do is to tell you the stages that he suggests going through and creating this kind of structural diagram, because you don't just want to grab one out of a commentary, you want to actually make your own. So Ross suggests that you take each line of your psalm and make a summary of that line, okay? What does the first line say? What does the second line say? What does the third line say? Do they group together, or do they seem to be separate ideas? Then he suggests for the next step to group the summaries into natural units. Let's see, say verses 1 through 4 are praise to God, and verses 5 through 7 are complaint, that kind of an idea. You want to make those observations on your own. And then when you get the groups together, you write yourself a 1-sentence summary of each group. And that's the kind of thing that you see in a commentary oftentimes. Verses 1 through 4, praise to God, will head a section, and then they'll explain to you what's going on in that section. So basically that's what Ross suggests doing. I'd like to see you do that as well. Go through each line, put it into your own words, and then see where it breaks up according to ideas. Okay? And this would be sort of an exegetical outline, and that kind of structural outline is what you want to make here at number 4.2. And then you can look at the genre of your psalms. You can consult Anderson Appendix B. Anderson is a book that I believe I will end up posting that as a summary for you so you can look at it. You can also look at other even online resources or your textbook that talk about the genre of the psalm. Now the genre is the literary form. Okay, so is it a lament? Is it a hymn? Is it a kingship psalm? That's what we're looking for there. We're not looking for other kinds of ideas. Only what have the form critics basically said about it. And can you tell what social setting it might have been used in? Is it something that sounds like it could have been used in the temple? Is it something that sounds like it might have been a shepherd's song out on the hills? Have a look at that and see if you can find some clues. Okay, and then point of view, characterization, and so forth are preliminary observations where you're going to look for who are the characters, what do they do in the psalm, who's talking, who's listening, and that's sort of another brief overview that you're going to make for yourself, and we'll go back on that then as you write the final paper. Number 6, words and context, has already got 2 videos that explain how to do this assignment, and they're in the week when the assignment is due, so you can go down there and have a look and see how this plays out. Okay, there's other stuff in here for that week where you're going to want to look at, for example, the figures of speech. Did you find any metaphor? Did you find any metonymy? Did you find any similes? That kind of thing. But the main gist of this particular week is the word study. So when you get around to doing that, be sure you go and check and consult with the word study instruction and suggestions down there in that particular week. Okay. Assignment 4 contains just some observational questions. Once you've done all this examining of your text, you're going to want to reread it and notice what kind of questions have come up for you. So as you're going along, go ahead and document your questions to the side and kind of keep track of them, and that makes writing this particular assignment pretty easy. One thing that we will add to this instruction that's not in here at the moment is to document your questions and then go back on your annotated bibliography and other kinds of sources that you've dug up and go, which one of these can help me answer my question now? Would a commentary help? A Bible dictionary? That kind of thing. So go ahead and have a look there at your sources. So this is where you can pull your annotated bibliography into some good use. Okay? So that's all of the gathering information steps that we'll do for Broyles. When we get to the final draft, we want to go through these stages, and we'll talk about this in a separate video as time goes by. But you'll notice, even at a cursory glance, that this doesn't look at all like that list that was at the beginning. Okay, first project is to revise your research. Okay, so that's where you're going to go back and kind of look and see what people have given you as feedback. Check your reference works now. Okay, these are the places where you're going to find those answers to questions. Now you're going to want to dig in and really see if you have an issue there to answer the question that you found. Then you'll sit down and write your paper. Okay, so there's some instructions there about how to write that paper. Most importantly, this is the one assignment in this whole group of assignments that does have a word length, 3,000 words double-spaced. Use footnotes because I grade these on the computer and notes are a little cumbersome to grade online. You want a bibliographic listing for every secondary source you actually use, and you'll submit your paper on the date specified on our assignment page, which you'll need to go and take a look at that. Now, the issue here with the 3,000 word paper is that actually a 3,000 word paper is a lot harder to write than a 6,000 word paper. But having looked at and graded and evaluated several papers over the past few terms, what I've noticed is that the 3,000 word papers tend to be more succinct and more easily followed, and actually sometimes they're the better papers than the really long ones. So I will hold you to the 3,000 word limit here, and that's plus or minus 10%. So if you happen to run over a few words, that's not a problem, or if you're under a few words, that is not a problem. But keep your goal in mind that you're going to take all the information you find and you're going to synthesize. You're going to choose the most important stuff. What do you want to tell those people that are sitting in front of you in your church or in a class, or a friend of yours who wants to know all about your psalm? You've got X amount of time to tell them the really important stuff. So you want to pull out the things that are going to be the most important. Okay. I will do some more about writing that final paper But those are the basic ideas that you're going to want to keep track of. And if you have any questions, let me know. But do pay attention to the instructions here in the very last part of that paper book, because you want to know that right from the outset, kind of what process we're working on. So please do be in touch with any questions or comments, and I'm really glad to help you out in any way I can. Talk to you soon. Bye now.